Hello, I hope you're there. Today it's Saturday. The church calls it Holy Saturday. Holy because it's the quiet day of patient waiting between those two important days, Good Friday and Easter Day. Jesus died on the cross yesterday, Good Friday. There was a rule that anyone who'd been crucified must be buried immediately. That was why Jesus was put into his tomb on the same day. He was buried in a garden, a lovely peaceful place. It was such a contrast from the cruelty of the desolate hill where he died. Pilate, the Roman governor who'd been happy to put one man to death to make life easier for everyone else, Pilate was worried that the place where Jesus was buried might become somewhere where people would come together to protest, to have a demonstration, perhaps try and take some action against the authorities. So he sent a couple of Roman soldiers to guard the tomb. The one who was in charge was called Longino. We know his name. And I'm going to read you the story of what Longino saw and heard that night. Not from the Bible, though it might be. Longino was standing at his post, awake, alert, all his senses straining into the darkness. It had been a long day, a day to remember. The city had been full for the festival, and there was a lot of excitement in the crowded streets. 3 men had been executed in the afternoon, and afterwards something unusual had happened. Normally, after they died on the cross, they were just left there, and their families could come and take them away to bury them if they wanted. But in one case, it was different today. The governor was afraid that the body might go missing. So Longino and his corporal had to go with some soldiers and watch the body being put into a tomb. And they rolled a stone over the door, and Longino and his corporal had to stand watch all night to make sure nothing happened to it. Longino wasn't too worried. There was a full moon, he could see all around. There was no one there except a gardener who was very worried about his cabbages, but now he seemed to have gone too, and everything was quiet. All he could hear was the soldier quietly snoring a few feet away. Then, out of the blue, something happened. So quickly that Longino almost missed it. A bright light, just for a moment, as if someone had opened a door there in the garden and let in a dazzling light. And then the door was closed again, and Longino was left dazzled by it. What had happened? And another strange thing, the gardener, who he thought had gone home hours ago, there he suddenly was, shuffling along the row of cabbages. What was he doing there? And then there was his corporal, sitting up, rubbing his eyes, saying, "What's that noise?" Longino had been focused on what was happening just in front of him, the dazzling white light, the door that had opened and closed in thin air, the gardener suddenly appearing, that he hadn't noticed the singing in the distance, singing as if people were celebrating up in the hills somewhere. But now, as he listened, the voices seemed to be coming from directly above, very quietly. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. The singing faded, the quiet returned in the moonlight. It was as if nothing had happened. Longino began breathing again. Perhaps all was well after all. He turned to his corporal and saw a look of horror on his face. He was looking at the tomb, just 6 feet away. The stone had gone from the door. It was wide open. It was just a dark hole in the wall. Nothing in all his training had prepared Longino for this. If some man or huge animal had jumped in front of him, if some great creature had tried to push the stone away, he'd have been ready with his spear or his knife, and it would have been easy, but he had no idea what had happened. He jumped forward to the tomb and looked in. It was absolutely empty. What's happened? What do we do now? He had to think very quickly. Not only would there be trouble, not only would he be in trouble, but the city would explode if they heard about this. What could he do? He could say it was an earthquake. that the ground had suddenly moved and the stone had rolled out of place. But what about the body? Who'd taken that? Had someone sneaked in? Well, his back was turned, there wasn't time, and it was too close. And another thought then began to appear at the back of his mind. He'd watched the young man on the cross. He thought there was something magnificent about him, even when his body was broken. The way he died had seemed powerful and dignified. And despite himself, Lonky had said out loud, "Surely this man was a son of God." Could he afford to suggest to the governor that something really very strange indeed had happened, which needed to be investigated? Or should he make up a story to save his skin? Was an earthquake story something the governor might believe? Well, as he stood there thinking, he heard voices by the entrance to the garden. People were coming, this was bad. And suddenly there was that song again. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Longino made up his mind. "Come on," he said to the corporal, "we must go and tell the governor about the earthquake." I'm going to say a prayer. If you'd like to make it your own, join with me in saying Amen at the end. Dear God, after Jesus died, his friends thought all their hopes had gone. All the plans they'd shared, all the good things they'd expected to come out of Jesus' life seemed to have evaporated forever. In our days, help us to be confident and courageous if ever we try to do the right thing and it seems not to be working out. Help us to persevere until the work is truly finished, forever and ever. Amen. Keep well, stay safe. Hope to see you again soon.